A penthouse worth £15 million overlooks Hyde Park, owned by a shell company registered in the British Virgin Islands. Empty. Down the street, another property with a tag of £22 million, registered to a trust in the Cayman Islands. Also empty. Across the city, the pattern repeats. Luxury flats, townhouses in Knightsbridge, mansions on Billionaire Row. It doesn't stop there. Mansions and high-value properties linked to foreign officials under investigation abroad appear across London. Assets connected to sanctioned individuals. Proceeds linked to corruption cases in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Parked in London real estate through complex ownership structures. This is not a crime story. It is a financial architecture story. How did London become a preferred destination for global illicit wealth? London did not become associated with illicit finance through explicit intent or policy design. Rather, its financial and legal architecture made it particularly attractive to foreign capital, including illicit wealth. The United Kingdom offers stable property rights, courts that enforce contracts, a legal system recognized worldwide, political stability, no capital controls. For individuals seeking to move wealth out of unstable regimes, evade sanctions, or distance assets from corruption investigations, these features are highly attractive. London also offers prestige. A Mayfair address signals legitimacy. Ownership in Knightsbridge or Belgravia conveys a status that rivals that of a few global cities. And unlike many financial centers, London offers discretion. Through offshore companies, trusts, and nominee directors, beneficial ownership can be obscured. The individual listed on the property register is often a corporate service provider based in jurisdictions such as the British Virgin Islands or Jersey. The ultimate owner is frequently unknown. Some reports cited by The Guardian and transparency organizations suggest that a significant share of global illicit finance passes through UK-linked jurisdictions, though precise measurement remains disputed and difficult to quantify. The mechanism is straightforward. A foreign buyer, often politically exposed, under investigation, or subject to sanctions, seeks to purchase property in London. The asset is rarely held in their personal name. Instead, it is acquired through a shell company. That company is typically registered offshore. The British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Jersey, Guernsey, British overseas territories and crown dependencies offering high levels of corporate secrecy. Beneficial ownership is obscured. The company appears on the UK Land Registry. The individual behind it does not. Transparency International estimates that more than 138,000 properties in England and Wales are owned by offshore entities. In prime central London, the concentration is significantly higher. Investigations have found that a large proportion of properties are purchased with cash or cash-equivalent transfers, frequently via offshore structures. Opacity is embedded in the structure. Estate agents facilitate the sale. Lawyers handle the conveyancing. Formation agents set up the offshore companies. Banks process the payments. Each step is legal. Each professional takes a fee. And at no single point is the origin of the money comprehensively interrogated. London's money laundering ecosystem depends on professional services. Law firms structure the deals. Accountants file the paperwork. Company formation agents create the shell entities. Banks move the money. Transparency International defines these actors as professional enablers. Individuals or organizations that provide services, either deliberately or negligently, that facilitate financial crime. The UK has regulations. The money laundering regulations require certain professionals to conduct due diligence on clients and report suspicious activity. But enforcement is fragmented. More than 22 different supervisory bodies oversee anti-money laundering compliance in the non-financial sector. Their resources vary. Their standards vary. Enforcement is inconsistent. Lawyers, in particular, file a disproportionately small number of suspicious activity reports compared to their risk exposure. Legal professional privilege, the confidentiality between lawyer and client, is often cited as a barrier to reporting. But regulators have warned for years. Privilege is being misused as a shield. A 2026 analysis by Fin Crime Central found that a large proportion of UK law firms were not fully compliant with anti-money laundering regulations. Critics argue that the current framework prioritizes financial openness and professional confidentiality over aggressive enforcement. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, large volumes of Russian wealth entered London. Oligarchs acquired football clubs, media assets, and high-value property. Political donations followed. British legal and public relations firms were retained. London became known colloquially as Londongrad. Transparency International has estimated that billions of pounds worth of UK property have been purchased by individuals accused or suspected of corruption or close political connections to the Kremlin. Many of these assets were held through offshore companies. According to investigative reporting, Chen Ji has been linked to large-scale international fraud allegations. Reporting found that offshore companies associated with him were used to purchase high-value London property. These findings are based on journalistic investigations rather than final court judgments. Ali Ansari, an Iranian banker, has been sanctioned by international authorities. Investigative reports have linked multiple London properties to entities connected to him. Investigative reports have linked multiple London properties to entities connected to him, including structures registered in the Isle of Man. Sanctions do not constitute criminal convictions. Bloomberg has reported that properties on Billionaire Row had been linked through offshore intermediaries to individuals connected to Iran's ruling elite, including Mojtaba Khamenei, son of Iran's supreme leader. The properties were not registered in his name, and the links were established through corporate and trust structures identified by reporters. These cases illustrate patterns identified by investigative journalism rather than isolated or adjudicated findings. For years, the UK committed publicly to reform. In 2016, following the Panama Papers, then Prime Minister David Cameron pledged action on offshore secrecy. Momentum slowed. Legislation passed in 2018 required overseas territories to implement public beneficial ownership registers. Implementation was resisted, citing privacy concerns and legal uncertainty. As of the mid-2020s, several jurisdictions had yet to introduce fully public registers. Unexplained wealth orders were introduced, but used sparingly. High legal costs and litigation risk limited their deployment. Regulation existed largely on paper. Enforcement lagged. The problem was not hidden. Successive UK risk assessments have identified property as a high-risk channel for money laundering. The 2025 National Risk Assessment again placed the sector in the spotlight, citing complex ownership structures, offshore companies, and opaque trusts as persistent vulnerabilities. The National Crime Agency has repeatedly warned that billions of pounds are laundered through the UK property sector each year, though precise measurement is inherently difficult. Between 2016 and 2022, billions of pounds worth of UK property were purchased with wealth suspected to originate from questionable sources. Industry bodies and regulators have acknowledged the risk. Reforms followed. Enforcement, however, has remained uneven. The mechanisms were known. The warnings were public. The response was slower. Change came gradually, then suddenly. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. The UK government imposed sweeping sanctions on Russian oligarchs and elites with ties to the Kremlin. Suddenly, properties were frozen, assets were seized. High-profile Russians found their London real estate under scrutiny. In March 2022, the UK introduced the Register of Overseas Entities. For the first time, foreign companies owning UK property had to disclose their beneficial owners. The register revealed thousands of properties owned through offshore structures. Some are linked to sanctioned individuals, others to politically exposed persons under investigation. But gaps remained. The register didn't cover trusts, a popular alternative to companies for holding property. In 2025, Transparency International identified more than 170 properties worth £2.5 billion bought with suspicious wealth and held through opaque trust structures. In late 2025, the Treasury announced reforms. The Financial Conduct Authority would consolidate anti-money laundering supervision for professional services by 2028. Unexplained wealth orders were used more aggressively. Authorities froze properties bought by international fraud bosses, politically connected elites, and laundering network affiliates. But challenges persisted. Claims of legal privilege complicated some investigations. Prosecutions were rare, and enforcement required resources that the government struggled to allocate. Reform exists. Implementation varies. London's role as a hub for dirty money persists in part because it is profitable. The financial services sector contributes billions to the UK economy. Property transactions generate fees for lawyers, agents, and accountants. Political donations also flow from wealthy individuals, including some whose sources of wealth are opaque or difficult to assess. Legal complexity acts as a barrier to enforcement. Prosecuting money laundering requires tracing funds across jurisdictions, piercing corporate veils, and navigating claims of legal privilege. Few cases ultimately reach courts. Moreover, developers operate within a more limited anti-money laundering framework than estate agents and financial intermediaries. While some obligations exist, oversight is less comprehensive, particularly in off-plan sales involving offshore buyers. This creates opportunities for early-stage capital placement with reduced scrutiny. As one investigator put it, the UK property market has been described as one of the easiest places in the world to conceal illicit wealth. Critics argue that the current framework reflects powerful economic incentives and that those who benefit from the system face limited pressure to push for fundamental change. London's property market is deeply integrated into global capital flows, particularly at the luxury end. Prime residential developments in areas such as Mayfair, Knightsbridge, and Nine Elms rely heavily on overseas buyers, many of whom purchase in cash or through complex corporate structures. This dependence creates a reinforcing economic loop. Foreign capital sustains high property valuations. High valuations generate substantial fees for developers, estate agents, lawyers, accountants, and lenders. These revenues, in turn, support a broader ecosystem of professional services that benefits from continued transaction volume rather than transaction scrutiny. Financial openness is also a strategic feature of the UK economy. The ability to attract global capital has long been framed as a competitive advantage for London as a financial centre. Measures that risk slowing inflows, even in the name of enforcement, can therefore face institutional resistance or cautious implementation. This does not require coordinated intent. Incentives alone are sufficient. When economic growth, employment, and tax revenues are closely linked to capital mobility, enforcement can become incremental rather than aggressive. Oversight frameworks may exist, but the appetite to test them against well-resourced counterparties can be uneven. The result is not deliberate facilitation, but structural tolerance. A system in which the costs of disruption are immediate and visible, while the benefits of enforcement are long-term and diffuse. London remains a global financial hub. Transparency reforms are underway. Anonymous party ownership is harder than it was 5 years ago, but not impossible. Trusts still offer opacity. Developers still operate within a more limited and uneven regulatory framework. Professional enablers still face fragmented, inconsistent supervision, and enforcement remains limited. Unexplained wealth orders are underused. Prosecutions are rare. High-value properties continue to be bought with cash through offshore entities. The structures that enabled those purchases remain intact. London built its reputation on the rule of law, financial stability, and global connectivity. Those same features make it attractive to those seeking to hide wealth. When capital flows freely, but accountability does not, financial centers become safe harbors for more than investment. The question is whether enforcement will consistently match ambition.